بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So in the previous lesson we looked at the statement of Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala, Wallahu ta'ala yastajibu al-da'awat wa yuqdi al-hajat. The translation of which is that Allah the Most High, He is the one who responds to the supplications and He is the one who fulfills the needs. Wallahu ta'ala yastajibu ad-da'awat wa yaqdi al-hajat. So the intent of al-Tahawi behind this statement, and today we're going to go through the explanation of Shaykh Saalih Aall Ash-shyakh. Last week we looked at the commentary of Shaykh Zayd al-Madkhali, Shaykh Saalih al-Fawzaan, and so today we're going to complete this topic with the commentary of Shaykh Saalih Aall Ash-shyakh. So here Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he means to indicate some of the effects of Allah's rububiyyah, the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal upon His creation. That Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who created the creation, He is their Lord, He is their Master, He is the King, the one who is the mutasarrif, the one who basically deals and takes care of their affairs, and He is the one who rewards them for their good deeds. He is the one who sends mercy upon them, and whenever they need something, then they return back to Allah Azza wa Jal. So all of these things that are mentioned here, these are basically from the athar, they are from the effects or from the aspects of Allah's rububiyyah. The fact that He fulfills needs, the fact that He rewards people, the fact that He sends His mercy upon them, the fact that He listens to their supplications, the fact that they're able to turn back to Him. All of these things are basically from the aspects or effects of His rububiyyah. So we see then that Allah Azza wa Jal, because He is the Rabb, all of the things originated with Him. So basically first of all of the favors He's bestowed upon man to begin with, and we see that He's given them all sorts of favors, all sorts of bounties, and in the same way, whenever they ask Him or make dua to Him, then Allah responds to them. Why? Because this is part and parcel of His rububiyyah. The fact that He is their Lord, the fact that He created them, the fact that He bestowed all these favors upon them. First of all, this is a ni'mah from Allah to begin with. In other words, this came from Allah from the beginning. Allah initiated this and gave them all of this. So not only has He given them that, but also whenever they make dua to Him, He will respond to them and look after their needs, and He makes easy the things that they are in need of, right? So this is something in addition, on top of the fact that it's part of His rububiyyah, but it's something additional to the fact that He created them and provided for them and showered many, many favors and bounties upon them already from Himself, from the outset. And then on top of that, He listens to their supplications, He responds to their supplications. Now, here, Imam al-Tahawi, he specifically made mention of these two things for a reason. These two things, which is responding to the supplications and fulfilling the needs. And the reason for that is that there are certain groups, from them are the extreme Sufis, the extremist Sufis, and likewise from them are the falasifa, the philosophers. And both of these two groups of people, basically, they say that there is no need to make dua. There isn't any need to make dua. and not to ask for any, for any needs, not to ask Allah for anything, because they say every single thing is already decreed by Allah Azza wa Jal. So if everything is already decreed, then there is nothing that is going to change what has been decreed. And they basically, so this is the saying of the Sufis. They use al-qadar as an argument. And as for the philosophers, then they basically say, well, everything is by natural causes. Everything takes place by natural causes anyway. So your worship, your supplication, doesn't have any effect upon anything. And this here was a statement of the falasifa going back, centuries. And that's the same thing that we see the people say today, the philosophers, the atheists, the scientists say today, that, the only thing that exists is natural causes. So these two groups, the Sufis on the one hand, the extreme Sufis who say, well, Allah has decreed everything anyway, so there's no need to make dua because what's going to come to you is going to come to you. And the philosophers, they have their own reason for denying that dua has an effect. So let's just discuss some of the issues connected to this then. So this is just like the muqaddimah, the introduction. And so as for the issues, there are 5 issues altogether. And so the first issue is to basically just mention and establish that in the Quran, we see Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions the fact that He responds to dua, He responds to supplications, and He gives to those who ask. So the Shaykh brings a number of proofs for that from the Quran. From them, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Surah Ghafir, Surah 40, verse 60. And your Lord has said, call upon me, I shall respond to you. Verily those who are arrogant away from His worship, they shall soon enter hellfire humiliated. And likewise we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He praised the prophets in that they call upon Him out of fear and hope. And likewise He explained that Allah responds to the dua of the one who is in a dire need, the muttar. He said, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ. Who is the one who responds to the one who is in a dire need, a great difficulty, when he calls upon him and removes from him the harm, and then he makes you to be inheritors upon the earth? Surah An-Naml, Surah 27, verse number 62. 27, verse number 62. And likewise, even Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned how He even responded to the dua of Iblis. So He says, قَالَ رَبِّ فَأَنظِرْنِي إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ قَالَ فَإِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنظَرِينَ. Iblis said, O my Lord, grant me a respite, meaning leave me for a while, until Yawmul Qiyamah, until the day that they are raised. And so Allah Azza wa Jal said to him, indeed you are from those who have been granted respite. So here Allah responded to his dua. And likewise He also mentioned how He would even respond to the dua of the kafara, the disbelievers, the mushrikeen, and the followers of shaitan. So He said, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. That when they embark and ride upon the ship, meaning speaking about the polytheists, they call upon Allah sincerely, making the religion for Him alone. Because here they are scared and they know that only Allah can help them. Yet when He saves them and delivers them to the land, then they start committing shirk again, they start associating partners with Allah again. And so this ayah is Surah Al-Ankabut 29 verse 65. The one before that, the verse before that was Surah Al-Hijr, Surah 15 verses 36 and 37. And so here we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He responds to the dua of the mushrikeen, and we'll elaborate upon this in what is to follow as well. And then also he says, وَإِذَا مَسَّكُمُ الضُّرُّ فِي الْبَحْرِ ضَلَّ مَنْ تَدْعُونَ إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. That when you call, or that when some harm comes to you whilst you're on the sea, on the ocean, you forget all of those whom you call upon besides him, except him. Surah Al-Isra, Surah 17, verse number 67. So here we see a great deal of variation here in terms of the dua. We see that the dua is, Allah commands dua, the dua made by the prophets, the righteous, the dua made by even the unrighteous, the disbelievers, the Iblis, for example, and the mushrikun and other than them. So all of this, we find that it occurs a great deal in the Quran. And what this indicates to us is that Allah is the Lord of everyone. Allah is the Lord of the believer. He is the Rabb of the disbeliever. He is the Rabb of the muwahhid and the mushrik. And because He is the Lord of everyone, then it necessitates that He gives. Right? So He gives to the believer. He gives to the disbeliever. And so when He gives to the believer, then it is a favor, it is a ni'mah. When He gives to the disbeliever, then it is for him, for his point of view, then basically it is it is basically adhab, it is punishment, and niqmah. It is punishment for that individual. So all of them, we find that all of them call upon Allah, and Allah responds to the one who calls upon Him, and He responds to the call of the one who is in a dire, difficult situation. And all of this is from the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal. So after this, this is basically the first point. And we find there are other hadith that the Shaykh brings as well. From them, the hadith of Salman radiyallahu anhu, that indeed Allah, inna Allah hayyun kareemun yastahyi min abdihi idha rafa'a yadayhi ilayhi an yaruddahuma sufran khaibatain. That Allah is generous, and He's also modest or shy from His servant, in that when he raises his hands to Him, that He is shy that he should return them empty-handed. And also the hadith that indeed Allah descends at the last third of the night to the lowest heaven, and He calls out, is there anyone who calls upon me that I may respond to him? Is there anyone who asks that I may give him? Is there anyone who seeks forgiveness that I may forgive him? So all of these evidences together that we've brought together here from the Quran, from the Sunnah, all of them indicate that Allah is the Rabb, the Lord of everything and everyone. He's the one who fulfills their needs. He is the one who bestows upon them good things. He is the one who responds to their dua when they call upon Him. And from this we understand that dua, therefore, is is a sabab, is a means from amongst the greatest of means which are beneficial. Right? Meaning dua is the thing by which we attain things. It's from the asbab, it's from the greatest of the asbab. So now this is the first point that we established then, a general point about the proofs in the Quran and the Sunnah that relate to dua and the command to dua, and how it is from the athar, it is connected to Allah's rububiyyah, and how, because He's the Lord of everyone and everything, then without distinction He may He will respond to the believer, the disbeliever, even Iblis. He will give to them, He will save them in times of difficulty. All of that we find in the texts. Now the second point then is coming to the people who opposed the issue of dua, who said that dua is not necessary. And so we said that there are two groups of people, the mutasawwifa, the Sufis, extreme Sufis, and likewise there was a faction of philosophers. And what they basically said, that as for the Sufis, they said Allah Azza wa Jal has already fulfilled all the needs of the servants, because from His qadar He has decreed every single thing. And so basically they gave two reasons. Number one, Allah has decreed every single thing. He has specified that every single thing will take place at a certain time, and that will happen at that time. And if there is something that isn't decreed, then it's not going to happen anyway. So what is the point in making dua? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not going to happen, then what role can dua possibly have? Right? This is one argument. And the second reason they brought, the second thing they said is that basically, because Allah Azza wa Jal has already decreed the needs of all of His servants that they need, then a person shouldn't really be making dua. Because this is kind of like the way they present it is like, this is as if it's like bad manners towards Allah. It's a deficiency of a person. Rather, he should be content and know that everything that he will ever need, Allah will bring it to him at the appointed time. And so therefore, the only thing for him is to just simply patiently wait for everything to come to him. And he should not be making dua. Because everything is going to come to him anyway. Everything is written for him. Everything is prepared for him. Right? So these two reasons they used, and they basically said that there is no need to make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, and it's pointless. Now, so these are the extreme Sufis, and these in fact are from the Jabariyah, because they believe that everything is by decree, and that the servant has to just simply accept and submit to whatever is going to come his way, and that he basically doesn't really have any choice. He's not able to act, he's not able to do things, he's not able to use the ways and means. So this is a general idea that they put across. Now, how do we, what is the answer to this? Well, answer to the first point is that we know that Allah Azza wa Jal has made many things to be dependent upon other things. So for example, we see for example that the birth of a child and a woman being impregnated, right? All of this has been made conditional and dependent upon marital relations. As Allah says in the Quran, يَحَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ إِنَاثًا وَيَحَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورِ. Allah grants females to whomever He wills, and He grants males to whomever He wills. However, this bestowal that Allah bestows people with offspring, it doesn't happen without a cause. It doesn't happen without a reason. And likewise, when Allah Azza wa Jal decrees that so-and-so person will become ill, he will fall ill, this illness that will come to that person, overwhelmingly we know that it always has a reason or a cause behind it. Right? Like someone might have an accident. Someone might, he might develop, for example, cancer or diabetes or any other ailment of the physical body. We know that in almost all occasions that there will be a cause that will be behind that particular disease. So we know that when Allah brings things out, when Allah decrees things, those things are decreed by way of the asbab, the created ways and means. And this is how the whole of the creation, operates. Likewise, when Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed that so-and-so person will become an alim, how did he become an alim? He only became an alim because he learned. إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ. As we see in the hadith, verily knowledge, acquisition of knowledge, is by learning. So how did he become an alim? Just sitting there doing nothing? And because Allah decreed he's going to be an alim? No. He became an alim because he took the ways and means, and he basically learned and acquired knowledge. So really, what these people are really saying then, it comes down to this, is that they are saying that they are negating the ways and means. They are negating what we call the asbab. They are negating that Allah decrees things and brings about things by way of other things. Right? Like the example that we've mentioned many times, that we would say that Allah Azza wa Jal, when a person is thirsty, a person drinks water because Allah has made water to be a sabab, a reason for the removal of the thirst. Whereas they would deny this, and they would say that the water has no effect. This was just a coincidence. And it just so happens that when a person drinks water, Allah creates the removal of that thirst in that person to coincide with the water. It had nothing to do with the water. Allah already decreed that your thirst would be removed. The water had nothing to do with it, but it just coincided, right? So what they're really saying is that they don't believe in the asbab, and they don't turn towards them. They don't, believe that Allah does things in this way, and so therefore they are basically Jabariyya, as we mentioned. And this is the people like the Ash'aris, they are upon this. Now this obviously, a person just by reflection, no, this is batil, is false. This really is a deficiency in intellect, because just from personal experience, everybody knows that things happen by way or through causes and effects. Right? The effects are tied to causes. Everything that we see in the dunya operates, like this. In the dunya that we see, where does the rain come from? There are causes behind the rain. Those clouds, where do the clouds come from? There are causes behind the clouds. Right? So everything we can see that it is tied to causes and their effects. So that's the first point. And so with this introduction then dua therefore is one of those things that Allah has made to be a cause. Just like in the worldly things, Allah has made all of the different the elements and what we see, there are many causes and effects. In the same way, dua, Allah has made this to be a sabab, a means of acquiring whatever Allah has decreed for him. Right? So dua is a means of acquiring whatever Allah has decreed for you. And this is no different to, for example, what we said before, when he becomes an alim, he became an alim because he sought knowledge, right? He took the means of seeking knowledge. Then dua is just like that. When a person wants to attain things, then dua is a means of attaining those things which Allah has decreed. In other words, to put it another way, Allah decreed for a person to, for example, become an alim. Let's stick to the same example, to become a scholar. But within the decree of Allah, Allah decreed that individual is going to take the ways and means. So when he took the ways and means, then he became an alim. Allah brought out that decree that he became an alim. So it was decreed he would become an alim, and also the use of the ways and means that would lead him to become an alim, that was decreed as well. So therefore the servant took the ways and means, and he became what was decreed for him. In a similar way, when a person, when Allah has decreed for him that a certain sustenance will come to him, it could be a car, for example, it could be a job, it could be some sustenance, it could be whatever else that might come to him. But Allah decreed that on the basis of supplication, dua that would be made by the servant at certain times with sincerity and using the appropriate times, that on account of that dua, Allah has tied that dua to that particular decree that will come to him. So here in the decree of Allah, that dua specifically has been made the sabab of that servant receiving whatever he's going to receive. And then the other asbab around it, Allah brings about that decree by way of other asbab around it. But the dua was part of that. Right? So a servant, he makes dua, and through dua things come about which are decreed for him. Right? So this is basically how we understand. So therefore dua is a sabab. Dua is a sabab. And we know the same example, that pregnancy does not happen except by a sabab, and all the other things, then dua is exactly the same, except that dua is from the greatest of all of the asbab, because through dua Allah's aid is brought, and Allah responds, and this is from the most powerful of ways and means that a servant has at his disposal. So this is the answer to the first argument that they brought. Remember, the first argument was If things are decreed, why do we have to make dua then? If it's going to come, it's going to come. If it's not coming, it's not going to come. What's the point making dua in the first place? So this was the answer to their first reason or first argument. The second argument they said was basically, they said that, well, we have to be content that Allah has decreed everything we need. And it's kind of bad manners, it's kind of, to ask Allah when we know that it's already been decreed anyway. This is something that is not required. Now really, when you think about this, what this statement is really saying is that the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal and the companions likewise, that when you look at them and you see them always making dua to Allah, always supplicating to Allah, then really it means that they are not perfect in their iman like what these people are alleging to be. Right? In other words, they are saying, well, because you know that Allah has decreed everything, then you don't ask for anything, because you know it's going to come to you anyway. So you just happily accept the decree of Allah, and this is from perfection in a person's iman. Now this would imply that the prophets, the messengers, the companions, and other than them, we know that they were greatest in making dua. It means that therefore they had a lower status, and their iman was deficient in that they couldn't happily accept and anticipate whatever Allah has decreed for them. And we see that this is certainly not the case. We know that the Prophet ﷺ was constant in dua all the time. He would never abandon dua for himself or his family. He would advise Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar and other than them to have lots of hope and to make dua and to be hopeful. And so this shows that the sign of perfection is that a person makes dua, not the other way around, not the way that the Jabariya claim. And we know that he would make dua at the last part of the night, in the various times when dua is accepted. And of course, the messenger is the most knowledgeable of all of the people of his Lord, and so his way and his practice is the best. So these two answers are a response to the two arguments used by the Sufis, right, to say that there is no need for dua. As for the philosophers, then basically the philosophers were of two types. There were those, the philosophers in that time, mainly the Greek philosophers, they had this view of the universe where they claimed that there are basically these spheres, right? There are 8-9 spheres like this, and they come round, and then we have the earth in the middle. And above the spheres is what they call an intellect, right? Which really, it's what they believe is governing the universe. And they say that each of these spheres, right, they have an influence on what happens further below, right? So basically it's kind of like astrology, right? It's kind of like, the stars and the heavens and, the heavenly bodies, they're the ones that influence things that take place upon, the earth, right? So what they would believe, now amongst the philosophers there were two types. There were those who said, yes, dua does have an effect because it's connected to the spheres, right? The heavens and what happens in the heavens, right? So really this is more like from the angle of astrology. Like you see what these people believe about if a star is in such and such a place, and if a star moves in such and such a place, then such and such thing will happen. There will be this good fortune, there will be that bad fortune, and they will connect things in this manner. And this is obviously a type of shirk. And so some of them said that dua is likewise connected to those types of things. Obviously we know that this is batil, we know this is false, and this is incorrect. But the group that we want to focus upon here is another group, and they are the ones who are like what we would know as the atheists today, right? They are the ones who we would call the naturalists. Those who believe there is only just nature, and everything which is in nature, all of the things that we can see, the ways and the means that we study by way of the scientific method, and we look at things, we observe things, we see patterns, we analyze them, and we can explain everything. We can explain how everything happens, how chemical reactions happen, how rain falls down, how this, how that. And so basically, they using this, they say that dua has no benefit whatsoever. Why? Because we know how things happen. We know that everything happens just purely upon nature, upon, everything has its own qualities, everything has its own properties. And, whether you make dua or not, there's no God who's going to respond to your needs. Everything happens just by nature. Right? This is what the atheists that they say today. So, now obviously it's clear here that these people, they don't believe in the prophets to begin with. They don't really believe, in a deity, a creator. And so therefore, it follows that they would make the likes of these claims that basically, we know why you fell ill, or we know why you were cured. It wasn't because God answered your supplication. You were cured because of this, this and this. You were cured because you took this medicine. You were cured because you got this treatment, and that treatment did whatever. Right? But obviously, this is from their jahl, from their great ignorance and deception, in that who is the one who placed these ways and means there in the first place, such that a person was cured by way of these ways and means? Who put these ways and means there in the first place? Who made this creation with all of its amazing, the design and everything working with each other in a perfect way to facilitate life and all the benefits for mankind? Right? Who put all of these ways and means together in the first place? So obviously their position is batil, it's false. But this is an argument they use to deny that dua has any effect. Right, so that finishes the second mas'ala, the second issue. Now we move on to the third issue. And now we come to discuss the actual issue of dua itself. When a servant makes dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, then there are 4 points that we can look at with respect to this issue of dua. First point is that when a person calls upon Allah Azza wa Jal, when he's humble to Allah Azza wa Jal, then what he's really asking for is the mercy of Allah. He's asking for Allah from His rububiyyah to shower His mercy upon him, and so therefore Allah will give whoever asks Him. Allah will respond to whoever calls upon Him. Why? Because He is the Rabb, as we mentioned at the beginning. And He will give to anyone. He will give to, as we said, He even gives to Iblis. And He will give to a disbeliever. A disbeliever may become ill and might call upon Allah. And Allah, he will become cured. And there might be a calamity that will come to a disbeliever. There will be a calamity. He'll call upon Allah. And Allah will remove the calamity from him. A mushrik will come. A mushrik will come. And, he'll come to a grave. He will ask, he's in a dire situation. He will ask, and then he will ask Allah, then he will ask the person in the grave. So he's committing shirk. And his dua will be answered. Because he came to Allah with a compelling need in his heart. Right? As someone who is mudtar. And because Allah is the Rabb of everyone, He will respond to the mushrik, to the kafir, to the atheist, to the believer. Because He's the Rabb of everyone. However, as we mentioned in the previous lesson, there are a number of things here. Number one, just because Allah has answered the dua of that person does not mean that He did so whilst being pleased with that person. Right? And just because Allah answers the dua of someone does not mean that He's pleased with that person. And likewise, the point that we mentioned previously as well, that Allah Azza wa Jal is not answering the dua of that mushrik on the basis of his ibadah. Because that is not valid ibadah. That ibadah is not acceptable to Allah. That dua that he made in terms of legislated ibadah, it is invalid. And so it can be the case that maybe that dua, maybe that what Allah gave to him coincided with qadr that was decreed anyway. Maybe it was something that Allah answered for that person as a means of fitna, as a means of putting him to trial, to test his gratefulness and things of that nature. Right? So these are some of the things that we need to bear in mind about this issue, about the dua of the mushrikun, the disbelievers being answered. Then it is from this angle that Allah will answer, because He is the Rabb. He is the Rabb. But does not mean that He will be pleased with them. Like, for example, He answered the dua of Iblis. Iblis said, "O my Lord, grant me a respite until the day of judgment." Meaning, lengthen my lifespan. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He increased the lifespan of Iblis. Even the prophets and the messengers, He did not increase their lifespan. Till Yawm al-Qiyamah, a person living for how many tens of thousands of years, He granted that to Iblis, or however long it might be. He granted that to Iblis. And so He answered his request. And so likewise, those who worship Al-Masih, Isa ibn Maryam, or they worship Uzair, or they worship others besides Allah, then He gives to them not because of their kufr, not because of their ibadah built upon that kufr. He didn't give it to them for that reason, but He gave it to them for a wisdom. So, for a wisdom which Allah knows, or it's either for a wisdom, or it is because He is the Lord and He gives. And so Allah made it to happen by way of His qadr. So this is the first issue in relation to the dua of the servant to his Lord. Second issue here, this is point mas'ala number 2, and second issue from mas'ala number 2. That when a person makes dua, it's implied within the dua that he is affirming numerous attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, numerous qualities of Allah Azza wa Jal. From them, number 1, that he's certain that his Lord exists. He's certain of the existence of his Lord. Number 2 is that he believes that Allah is listening to him. So he's affirming the sama', the hearing of Allah Azza wa Jal, that He is as-sami'. Number 3, that he believes that Allah is qadir. He knows Allah has the ability to respond to him. Number 4, he has certainty that Allah is the one who is free of need. Allah gives without any reckoning or any counting. Allah is free of any need, He is rich, and He gives. This is the 4th thing he believes about his Lord whenever he calls upon Him. Number 5 is that he knows Allah is merciful to His servants, because to be able to ask Allah in the first place, this is number 5. Allah is free of any need. He is ghani, He is rich, He has plenty. Number 5, he knows, implied when he makes dua, is that he knows his Lord is merciful. And finally, number 6, that he is certain that Allah is alive, is hayy. Allah has life. And so all of these things, basically, when a person just merely makes dua to Allah, it's implied by the fact that he's making dua that he is affirming all of these attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so this really shows that when a person makes dua to Allah, the one who often makes dua to Allah, he's more complete in his tawheed. A person who we see him hardly making dua to Allah, raising his hands to the sky, asking Allah for the good of this life, the good of the hereafter, safety in this life, safety in the hereafter, and he makes use of the du'as that we find in the sunnah. Rarely do we find him do this. This is a deficiency in his tawheed, and a weakness. And as for the one who is often and frequent and abundant in his dua, then clearly, because dua has all of these things attached around it, this knowledge of Allah, His attributes, and what is implied that a servant has certainty in them, then it's something that is a sign of his strength in tawheed, that his heart is attached to Allah Azza wa Jal. So that's what this indicates. The third affair in relation to this is that that Allah Azza wa Jal has put conditions when a person makes dua. Sometimes a person might make dua and he will not be answered, and there are certain reasons for that, because he hasn't brought all the conditions and he hasn't removed all the preventative barriers, and we should look upon that in a bit more detail in what is to follow separately. That's the third issue. And the fourth issue in relation to the this point is that Allah Azza wa Jal, when He answers the dua of a person or he fulfills the need, that is not a proof of anything. Right? So just because he answered the need of a Christian or of a Jew or of a grave worshipper or of anyone else, that does not, in itself is not a proof of the correctness of anyone or anything. Allah will give to the sinner, the evil sinner. Allah will give to the mubtadi', the innovator. Allah will give to everyone and anyone. But that bestowal, that answering of the dua is not itself a proof of anything that a person is right. Right? That's why you will see many of the grave worshippers, they will boast and they will say, well, we did such and such and such whatever, and we went to the grave of so-and-so, we did this and we did that whatever, and we received this and did it, and so-and-so person was cured, and so-and-so person was bestowed a child, and so-and-so person this one, and they're using this as a proof. This is not right, because Allah's rububiyyah is for everyone. He will give to everyone. He will remove calamity from everyone, irrespective of who it is, because this is basically the implications of his rububiyyah. He's the Rabb of everyone. So he will give to the atheist, the disbeliever, the mushrik. He will save them from calamities. Right? So this in itself is not a proof of anything at all. However, the distinguishing thing in all of this is that for the believer, the righteous servant, when Allah bestows or gives, then he is pleased in that. He does that out of love and pleasure for his servant. That's what the difference is. As for everyone else, then he's just giving for a wisdom amongst the wisdoms that he knows. And so really, for a believer, it is a ni'mah from Allah Azza wa Jal. And for other than him, it is basically a trial. It is a test and a trial. Right? So, and then we find this is indicated in the hadith, the famous hadith Qudsi, that my servant never ceases coming closer to me with the nawafil until I love him. And when I love him, I become the hearing with which he hears. I become the seeing with which he sees. I become the hand with which he strikes and the foot with which he walks. If he was to ask me, I would certainly give him. If he was to seek refuge in me, I would certainly give him refuge. All of this is given by Allah to the servant out of Allah's love and pleasure for this servant. But as for others, then it is not like that. So that is the third issue of the 5 issues, and there were 4 points in all of that put together. This now brings us to the 4th mas'ala, which is the issue of how come when a person calls upon Allah Azza wa Jalla and he doesn't give the servant, and he doesn't give to the servant, despite the fact that Allah has said, and your Lord has said, call upon me and I shall give to you, I shall respond to you. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. So, there are a number of reasons why a person will not be answered. And so the Shaykh goes on to mention that hadith that we mentioned in the previous lesson. There is no Muslim who calls Allah with a supplication in which there is no sin, asking for something which is a sin or cutting off of ties, except that Allah will give him one of 3 things. Either he will hasten in responding to his supplication, or he will remove some evil from him, or thirdly, he will save that for him till Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? So there are 3 ways by which Allah Azza wa Jal will deal with his servant. So meaning, either he will respond to him and give to him, or he will remove some harm from him, or he will save the reward of that thing till Yawm al-Qiyamah. And Allah Azza wa Jal, we know that He knows best what is in the interests of His servant. So when a servant thinks or is making dua and Allah is not answering his dua according to what he sees, then he should understand these things, that Allah Azza wa Jal could have been removing harm from him. Allah Azza wa Jal could be saving the reward for that for him till Yawm al-Qiyamah, when he is most in need of good deeds and reward. So that's one thing. The second thing, so this is one explanation that we find clearly in this hadith. And the second thing is that a person might, a dua has conditions, and you can't ask for things which are haram. You can't ask for something which is haram. You can't ask for cutting of ties. You can't ask for things which are unlawful. So this is why your dua will not be answered. And likewise, we said that there could be things which could be preventing your dua from being answered, such as unlawful haram which a person is eating, haram which a person is drinking, haram by which a person is clothed by. Right? Now, this is something we mentioned in the previous lesson as well. So this is a second reason, and so this is the second reason. And finally, we'll come to the fifth and final point. So that was point number 4, as to why a dua is not answered. And finally, we'll come to the last and final issue, which is that as Allah Azza wa Jal, when we know that He responds to dua, He fulfills the needs, He gives to the one who asks, then a person must prepare himself to make dua in a way that will ensure that he will be answered. And to understand this point, the Shaykh presents a beautiful statement from Umar bin al-Khattab, which shows the beautiful etiquette or behavior in terms of how a person should be with respect to dua. So he says, indeed, I never made my concern I never made it my concern to think about Allah answering, but rather I made all of my concern focused around the dua itself. And thus, when the dua is done successfully in the right way, then the answer will come. Right? So in other words, he's not thinking or concerned about Allah answer me. What he's thinking and concerned about when he's making dua is this dua being done in the right, correct way, and putting all of his focus upon that and making sure it's going to be, basically he's doing everything to make sure it's going to be answered. When he does that, then the answer will come, because it's guaranteed. Right? So this speech here by Umar bin al-Khattab is great and mighty speech. And in thinking about this, a person should realize, who is it that he is calling upon? Who is it that he's calling upon? He's calling upon the one who says about himself, وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبْضَتَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ مَطْوِيَّاتٌ بِيَمِينِهِ. He's calling upon the one in whose hand is the whole of the earth on the Day of Judgment, and the heavens rolled up in his right hand. He's calling upon the one who has the keys of the unseen, who knows what is in the ocean and in the land, and no leaf falls except that he knows it. There's no seed in the darkness of the earth except that he knows it, and nothing which is dry, nothing which is wet, except that it is in a book, a clear book. He's calling upon the one who responds to the one who is in dire need, in a calamity. He responds. He is the one who knows the secret and the hidden. He knows the deception of the eyes. He can see that he knows the deception of the eyes of the people. He knows what's in the hearts. He knows the whisperings of every person. This is the one that a person is calling upon. So when he makes dua, he needs to know who is it that he is calling upon. And so, in other words, Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he made this remark, he's not concerned about the response to his dua. He's concerned about, the dua itself. And who is he that he's calling upon, and making sure the dua is done with the right etiquette, and so on and so forth. And so for that reason, the point that we take from this is that a person, when he makes dua, he has to make ijtihad, he has to strive in his dua to make his heart be present, to beautify this dua, to raise his hands, to choose the suitable times, and to do it in the various times where it's, you could do it in sujood, for example. You could do it when it's raining, for example. You could choose certain times when it's legislated and recommended to make dua and likely to be answered. So he strives in finding all of these ways and means to make this dua, which is then likely to be answered. Likewise, his salah, in the sujood, in at-taraweeh, in the night prayer, all those different scenarios and situations, he strives to find that right moment, that perfect moment, where to make that dua. This is what is meant by the statement of Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. But as for when he's just haphazard and just casually is making dua and his heart is not really present, and you don't really feel in his heart all of those things connected to the tawheed of Allah, His names and attributes, the heart is not really present, right? Then this will be reason for the dua never to be answered. And he could be sinful when he makes dua in this haphazard way and he asks for things which are not lawful and so on and so forth. So this point here then is a great and mighty affair. And with that we come to the end of our lesson. So just really to basically summarize, At-Tahawi mentioned that Allah responds to the supplications and fulfill the needs. By way of this, we refute the groups who believe that dua has no effect. We believe that dua is a sabab from the asbab. It is from the greatest of the asbab, and it has an actual effect upon the affairs of al-qada wal-qadar. And we looked at evidences in the Quran for that. We looked at the arguments of the Sufis who are Jabariyah, and the philosophers, the atheists of today who are naturalists, who say that everything happens by natural causes. We looked at the, when a person makes dua, some of the issues connected to it, such as the feelings of the heart and the beliefs that a person has when he invokes Allah. We looked at the issue of what prevents the dua from being answered, a number of reasons and causes. And finally, we looked at the issue of striving to make sure that the dua is answered by being concerned about the dua itself rather than being concerned about the answer to the dua. And so this concludes our discussion of that point. We'll move inshallah ta'ala in the next lesson to the next point. وَيَمْلِكُ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ وَلَا يَمْلِكُهُ شَيْءٍ. I will come to that inshallah in the next lesson. وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ.